You are currently positioned at a profound tipping point. I don't mean this in a symbolic or poetic sense. Right here, right now, in the physical world, you are hovering on the brink of an event that has been quietly approaching you for a very long time. The fact that you stumbled upon this video, that some quiet instinct urged you to click play, isn't an accident. Forget luck, and forget the algorithm. This is a doorway, and the lock has just been turned. Listen closely to this fundamental truth. The force heading your way won't send a herald. There will be no sirens, no blatant red flags that your conscious mind can easily categorize. It won't pop up as a notification on your calendar or come with a user manual. It will simply manifest. And by the instant it does, you will already be caught in the middle of the transition, suspended halfway between the person you used to be and the individual you are about to become. The dilemma isn't whether this shift is going to happen. The real issue is whether your eyes will be open wide enough to recognize it when it engulfs you. This is the doorway, and you are towing the line this very second. Deep down, you know something has been shifting. You've sensed a strange, nameless pressure bubbling up beneath your everyday routines. Perhaps you've tried to label it. You might have brushed it off as mere agitation, stress, or exhaustion. Maybe you called it a temporary slump, convincing yourself that if you just got some sleep or waited for the dust to settle, your old self would return. Yet, deep within you, a silent but razor-sharp intuition understands that this is no fleeting mood. It recognizes that this phenomenon isn't going to fade away. It knows you aren't journeying back to your past identity. Instead, you are pushing through to the other side. Through what, exactly? That is the sole purpose of this message. The portal that has suddenly materialized in your life isn't just spiritual fluff. It is a concrete occurrence, a quantum leap, comprehending its mechanics, grasping how it functions, and knowing what awaits on either side is what separates an intentional evolution from being dragged blindly into the unknown. It's the gap between stepping into your new life with absolute vision versus waking up dizzy, questioning what just hit you. You are about to uncover exactly what has been going on. You will grasp precisely what is unfolding in this present moment. By the conclusion of this video, you will possess a profound certainty. You won't need blind faith or optimistic belief. You only need the courage to look closely. You will realize that the wave rushing toward your doorstep isn't a threat. Rather, it represents a culmination, the ultimate destination every past version of you has been striving to reach. The person who started watching this video will not be the same person who finishes it. The path is clear. Let's step forward. Consider a principle in quantum physics known as a phase transition. This term outlines the exact fraction of a second when a system, a cluster of particles, an energy field, or physical matter completely transforms from one distinct state into another. This doesn't happen bit by bit. It isn't a slow progression. It occurs instantaneously, right at a specific threshold, the moment the environment aligns perfectly. Think about freezing water. It doesn't turn into solid ice in a slow, continuous curve. It hits a very specific temperature marker, and in that split second, a total transformation occurs. Liquid molecules that were flowing freely suddenly lock into a rigid, entirely new architecture. This metamorphosis isn't sluggish or made of baby steps. It is a definitive leap. One reality concludes, and a fresh one initiates. Furthermore, that water cannot revert to its liquid state without undergoing another profound threshold event. This perfectly mirrors your current situation. You aren't navigating a gentle path of self-improvement. You aren't hiking up a steady, predictable hill toward a slightly better lifestyle. You are positioned exactly at a phase transition, a genuine quantum checkpoint. The internal climate of your awareness has finally achieved the precise alignment needed for a total state transformation. And when this shift strikes, it won't be a gradual climb. It will be an immediate, full-scale crossover. One version of you wraps up, and a new one activates. The unseen force speeding toward you right now, the very thing that will arrive without a warning bell, is the spark that ignites this leap. Allow me to break down the mechanics of this. In the realm of quantum physics, particles hang in a state known as superposition. Simply put, before a specific outcome is locked in, before an observation occurs or a boundary is crossed, a single particle occupies countless potential states at the exact same time. It hasn't chosen one path over another. It embodies every single possibility simultaneously, each carrying its own distinct odds. In a literal sense, the particle is everything it has the potential to be, all at once. Then, a definitive trigger occurs, a measurement, a collision, a threshold event, and that boundless superposition shatters. All those infinite, swirling possibilities instantly condense into one single concrete reality. The particle sheds its limitless potential and becomes one very specific, undeniable thing. A single state, one concrete reality. This reduction happens in a flash. The transition is finalized. These are the exact mechanics of a psychological and spiritual tipping point. Prior to this boundary, you reside in a state of superposition. You remain the individual you have historically been, while concurrently embodying the person you are evolving into. Both identities exist at once. Both hold truth. Your past blueprints and your emerging vibration share the same space, intertwining to produce that bizarre friction you've recently noticed. That feeling of straddling two distinct realms, of feeling out of place in your own existence, of anticipating an unnamed arrival. That is the essence of superposition. That is your reality right outside the doorway. Suddenly, the tipping point hits the trigger, the unannounced catalyst. Instantly, the superposition shatters. It isn't a slow fade. It happens in a single heartbeat. The former paradigm terminates. The new one activates. You step through. The issue isn't if this shift will happen. The stage is already prepared. Ten hey Tom. Allures and ten inediare team. The edge is right beneath your feet. The real issue is whether your comprehension is deep enough to navigate this shift intentionally. Will you walk through with crystal clarity, or will you be left dizzy by an evolution you don't understand? This video serves as your guiding framework. Let's examine what lies on either side of this portal. You simply can't navigate a transition deliberately without recognizing your starting point and your destination. The vast majority of individuals currently perched on this very precipice know exactly what they are leaving behind, but possess zero vision of where they are heading. This imbalance is exactly why the shift often feels like a painful loss instead of a triumphant arrival. On your current side of the boundary, there exists an identity forged through accumulation. Brick by brick, through a lifetime of encounters and societal programming, you constructed a persona. You built a specific lens for viewing yourself, calculating your potential, and deciphering the world. This constructed ego did its job. It kept you safe. It steered you through the complex landscape of your past. It wasn't an error or a failure. It was the perfect vehicle for a specific era of your timeline. However, it was engineered for a vibration you are now exiting. This is crucial to grasp. The identity standing on this side was tuned to a very particular wavelength of existence, a defined set of boundaries, a limited scope of possibilities, and a constrained self-image. You've been expanding beyond those old settings for quite some time. That persistent agitation you feel, that realization that your normal routines feel alien, those chats that suddenly seem utterly empty, the environments, relationships, and habits that once offered solace but now feel like a tight, suffocating sweater. None of that means you are broken. It isn't a lack of appreciation. It is a flashing beacon confirming your internal vibration has already elevated. You are pulsating at a frequency that your outdated architecture simply cannot contain anymore. This transition isn't a future event. The leap is already underway. Looking at the opposite side of the doorway, your destination there resides an identity that wasn't cobbled together. It isn't the product of accumulated baggage or the defensive walls you were forced to construct. Beyond this threshold awaits the individual who emerges when the superposition finally condenses into your true frequency, the very frequency you've been inching toward throughout your entire life. This isn't a flawless, utopian avatar. It's not some mystical, unattainable state of enlightenment. It is a highly specific, sharply defined iteration of you. It's the self that holds everything you've been working toward, even when you were completely blind to the blueprint. And the unseen force rushing toward you today, the unheralded arrival, is the exact trigger that unlocks this new identity. It won't happen by degrees. It will be instant, just as water snaps into solid ice at the freezing point, just as superposition instantly shatters into a singular reality upon observation. This portal stands between your history and your destiny, and the door is wide open today. Let me clarify exactly why this catalyst operates in silence. It isn't a lack of communication. The universe isn't hiding secrets from you. This is simply the mechanical nature of quantum leaps. Grasping this concept will instantly melt away the fear of the unknown. As a quantum system nears its transition point, it lacks the ability to forecast the precise microsecond of its own collapse. A state of superposition doesn't get a heads up. Water doesn't possess a countdown clock to becoming ice. The boundary is neared. The environment aligns perfectly, and the metamorphosis executes. Not because a conscious choice was made, but because the surrounding variables rendered the shift utterly unavoidable. The destination is inherently woven into the journey. By the time you become aware that you are traversing the divide, you are already halfway across. This is precisely why the incoming force won't offer a preamble. It's not operating in stealth mode. It isn't a harbinger of doom. It's simply that formal warnings are artifacts of your previous reality. The next evolution of yourself doesn't issue a media alert. It manifests as a profound pivot, an abrupt, undeniable pivot that your intellect won't register first. Instead, a much profounder part of you will. The part that has been holding its breath for this exact energetic signature. Your inner restlessness has understood this all along. The fragment of you that jolts awake at 3 a.m. without a logical reason. The aspect of you that freezes during mundane tasks, suddenly aware of a colossal, looming presence pressing against a fragile, invisible wall. That specific part of your psyche is already stationed at the gateway. It has already absorbed the vibration of what is approaching. Your logical brain is merely lagging behind. Allow it the time to sync up. That is the core mission of this message. Now, let's examine the two distinct methods for navigating a pivotal transition. There are only two paths, and the route you select dictates virtually everything about your condition upon arrival. The first method is the blind traverse. This occurs when the pivotal moment strikes, and you possess no mental map for what is unfolding. Your previous reality starts to crumble. Established routines unravel. The labels that anchored your existence begin to waver. The familiar landmarks you relied on to steer your life no longer align with your current surroundings. Lacking a guiding framework, your brain immediately flags this as an emergency, as a critical malfunction, a sign that everything is falling apart. Consequently, you react exactly as the mind does during perceived peril. You scramble backward. You attempt to glue the dissolving pieces back together. You desperately try to clutch what is naturally slipping away. You burn massive amounts of energy, resisting an evolution that isn't trying to destroy you, but rather elevate you. Eventually, you will stumble onto the other side because the transition is unstoppable. However, you will arrive battered, disoriented, and bewildered, carrying the unnecessary scars of a war you waged against a doorway you never needed to fight. The alternative is the awakened traverse. This unfolds when the pivotal event hits and you accurately identify it. When the old structures begin to melt, instead of scrambling backward, you recognize that this decay isn't ruin. It is vital groundwork. It is the necessary clearing of the slate. It is your quantum blueprint shedding infinite possibilities, solidifying into the specific destiny every past version of you has been marching toward. Instead of battling the tide, you glide alongside it. You remain sharp and grounded, but you cease throwing up barricades against a transformation designed to serve you. You cross the finish line centered and lucid, possessing the unshakable vision of someone who walked through the fire with their eyes wide open. This video is the bridge between those two outcomes. You are destined to cross over with complete awareness. You will arrive fully oriented, grasping with crystal clarity without relying on blind faith the exact nature of the portal, the catalyst heading your way, and the reality waiting for you. The door is unlatched. Keep walking with me. If these words are sinking in, if any part of this message echoes the silent stirrings within you, please hit like and subscribe so you are equally prepared for the next doorway that appears. Let's address a common misconception regarding the mechanics of human awareness. Most traditional models paint consciousness as a slow, creeping expansion like a seedling inching toward the sun day after day. While there is a kernel of truth there, as silent, steady development definitely occurs beneath the surface, that slow burn isn't the actual breakthrough. That gradual climb is merely the journey to the precipice. When you finally hit that edge, what happens isn't just more growth. What occurs is a total metamorphosis. Consider it this way. You can apply heat to a pot of water for hours, raising the temperature slowly, degree by degree. The water remains liquid. It gets hotter. It behaves slightly differently, but its core nature is unchanged. Then, it hits the boiling point, and everything alters instantaneously. That massive phase shift isn't caused solely by the final tiny unit of heat. It is the culmination of every single degree that preceded it. The slow build-up finally reaches the absolute tipping point, where a totally different category of transformation is triggered. A phase transition, a complete breakthrough. Every ounce of self-reflection you've engaged in, all the inner healing, the probing questions, the letting go, and the striving, none of it was pointless just because it didn't spark an overnight miracle. It was the crucial heating process. It was the approach. It was laying the groundwork for the exact threshold you are standing on today. And the catalyst speeding toward you is the final spark needed for the leap. This isn't due to a lack of magnitude. In reality, monumental shifts rarely look cinematic to an outside observer. Instead, they are highly targeted and exact. They often disguise themselves as mundane occurrences that your logical brain easily brushes off. A brief chat, a sudden insight, a flash of silence, a random meeting, a quiet closure, or a fresh start. Yet, these seemingly small sparks contain the precise energetic pitch required to push your entire system over the edge. The moment that spark lands, the massive metamorphosis you've been inching toward for years detonates instantly. You won't miss it, but you won't recognize it through a loud crash. You'll recognize it through a profound internal stillness. It's that heavy, peaceful silence that drops when you hear an undeniable truth. It isn't just a lack of noise, it is the heavy presence of deep knowing. That feeling is the portal swinging wide open. That is the exact start of your migration. You won't even have to make a conscious choice to step through. You will already be moving. Your singular duty, the only action this message demands, is that you refuse to look backward. Do not confuse the crumbling of your past with the destruction of your core being. Grasp that the pieces breaking off right now were destined to shatter at this exact juncture. They were forged for an environment you no longer inhabit. Similarly, whatever is rushing toward your doorstep was fated to meet you here. It is custom built for the elevated vibration you are stepping into. Retreating is impossible. And frankly, there's absolutely no reason you should want to. Let me share a tale of two distinct individuals facing this exact same doorway. This gateway isn't exclusively yours. It's a universal checkpoint that manifests at critical stages of human evolution. Countless others have faced it, and analyzing their journeys will illuminate your own. Consider our first traveler, Marin. She had constructed a perfectly logical existence. It wasn't flawless, nothing is, but it made sense. Her life had clear boundaries, a decent job, comfortable friendships, and an identity solid enough to get her through the week without major friction. Then, during an otherwise mundane chapter, the ground beneath her began to tilt. That decent job suddenly felt painfully empty. Those comfortable friendships suddenly felt like radio broadcasts on a station she could no longer tune into. Her once solid identity started to fit like an itchy sweater woven for a stranger. Her instinct was to repair the damage. She forced deep talks, hoping to resurrect the lost spark in her relationships. She desperately tried to pivot her mindset at work, to manufacture artificial purpose. Most tragically, she tried to diagnose her own flaws. When your world is decaying around you, it's easy to assume you are the malfunction. You convince yourself that if you just patch the leak, your comfortable, predictable life will return. But that old comfort never returns. It was engineered for a past wavelength, and her internal dial had already spun forward. No amount of glue or duct tape on a shattered paradigm will make it withstand a higher vibration. It is fundamentally impossible, like delicately holding a flame to an ice cube and begging it not to melt. The phase transition is locked in. The boundary is breached. The infinite possibilities are collapsing. Marine wasted 2 grueling years warring against the inevitable. 24 months of deep fatigue, sorrow, and bewilderment, constantly grabbing at a chapter that had naturally ended. She fought tooth and nail to cage something that was desperately trying to fly away. Eventually, she did end up on the other side, because the evolution stops for no one. But she crawled across the finish line completely drained. She entered her new reality utterly exhausted from trying to barricade the door. Now, look at our second traveler, Davan. He arrived at the identical juncture. He experienced the same crumbling of his safety nets, the exact loss of direction, and that same eerie emptiness draining the color from his once vibrant life. However, Davan possessed a blueprint. It wasn't a flawless, turn-by-turn GPS, but it was enough to see the crumbling as an upgrade, not a catastrophe. He recognized that his life wasn't falling apart due to failure or defect. It was disassembling because its mission was accomplished. It had done its job, and his inner frequency was upgrading. Therefore, when the walls came down, Davan didn't scramble to catch the bricks. He didn't try to resurrect the dead. He simply sat in the uneasy waiting room of the transition, that weird, floating void where the past is gone, but the future hasn't materialized yet. He remained anchored. He wasn't numb or apathetic. He was just profoundly steady. He placed his absolute faith in the physics of the leap. He understood that this profound shift was steering him toward greater harmony, not less. That this doorway was leading him into a new life, rather than merely dragging him away from his past. When the ultimate catalyst finally appeared, slipping in silently, disguised as something so mundane his logical brain might have easily ignored it, Davan saw it for what it was. He didn't figure it out intellectually at first. It registered as a deep internal hush, a profound stillness that preceded absolute vision. Then, the blinding clarity hit, and his transition was finalized. He stepped into his new reality with his vitality fully preserved. He was grounded, fully aware that the crumbling of his old life wasn't a tragedy, but a necessary runway. He realized his years of struggle weren't a waste. They were the essential boiling process, setting the stage for this exact leap. The final spark wasn't a roll of the dice. It was a calculated, predetermined milestone etched into his spiritual timeline, long before he could even articulate what he was evolving into. 2 individuals, one identical threshold. Both made it across, yet their conditions upon landing were wildly contrasting. One collapsed at the finish line, battered and bewildered from an unnecessary war. The other stood tall, laser-focused, using the momentum of the shift to propel themselves forward rather than dragging themselves out of the wreckage. You are destined to take Davan's route, not because you are inherently superior to Marin, but simply because you now possess the map. You finally grasp the true nature of this portal. You know that the decay around you is graduation, not failure. You understand why your next chapter won't sound an alarm. You recognize that the heavy silence preceding revelation is the sound of the locks turning. It isn't a threat to hide from. It's an invitation to stand tall. The doorway is completely unblocked. You are walking through with your eyes wide open. Let's take a brief pause. I have a request for you. Can you recall a specific instance in your life where you knew without a shadow of a doubt that you had passed a point of absolute no return? A split second where your entire universe pivoted, ensuring the person you used to be was gone forever? Drop that exact moment in the comments below. Don't over-explain it. Just declare it. Speaking it into existence fuels the collective energy. Every time one of us publicly claims our breakthrough, the entire network of awakened travelers levels up. Now, let's zoom in on the raw mechanics of the leap itself, the exact nucleus of the transition. The vast majority of spiritual guides focus heavily on the before and after, entirely neglecting the actual bridge. Yet, the bridge is exactly where almost everyone trips. It isn't because the gap is inherently lethal, but because it triggers a very unique type of vertigo. Once you demystify this vertigo, it loses its power over you. Right at the epicenter of the shift, at the absolute point of no return, you enter a phase that quantum mechanics refers to as decoherence. This is the chaotic gray area, where the infinite possibilities are shattering, but the new, solid reality hasn't completely solidified yet. It's the ultimate limbo. The old you has expired, but the new you hasn't finished downloading. You are caught in a void no longer your past, but not quite your future. This is undoubtedly the most dizzying segment of any metamorphosis. It is precisely here that your panicked brain, starving for stability, will frantically claw at the ghosts of your old life. It reaches for the outdated maps, the expired labels, and the crumbling walls. It doesn't do this because those things are helpful. It does it because they are recognizable. During decoherence, your ego will always prefer a familiar prison over an uncharted paradise, simply because the prison has a floor plan and the paradise is still rendering. This is the ultimate test. This exact split second is where the awakened leap and the blind stumble part ways forever. During a blind stumble, the vertigo of decoherence triggers an immediate retreat. The brain violently grasps at the past. Now, this doesn't cancel the evolution once the dominoes fall. The transition is unstoppable. However, it severely drags out the decoherence. It traps you in that suffocating limbo for much longer, turning a swift transition into a prolonged, agonizing ordeal. Conversely, during an awakened leap, you identify this vertigo instantly. You don't misread it as a massive mistake or a red alert. You recognize it as the bridge itself, the very core of the transformation. So, instead of flailing backward, you hold your ground. You sit quietly within the chaos, refusing to force a premature fix. You let the decoherence run its course. You allow the quantum collapse to finish its job without scrambling for your old safety blanket before your new armor has materialized. Understand this clearly. Holding still in the void is not passive. Holding your ground in the void is perhaps the most intensely demanding action a conscious mind can execute. To exist inside the static of decoherence suspended in the twilight zone of the threshold and simply hold. To refuse the urge to claw backward. To place absolute trust in the machinery of the shift. Allowing yourself to sit in the dizzying fog until your new reality snaps into focus. Here is the secret weapon this blueprint provides. Something mere trial and error cannot. When you recognize that decoherence is simply a tunnel, not a trap, an intermediate stage, not your final destination, you realize it has an expiration date. You know the fog will lift. You know the new paradigm will crystallize. The coordinates will absolutely appear. They won't be the old coordinates. Those are permanently deleted, and rightfully so, but entirely new ones, specifically programmed for the higher vibration you are entering, rather than the outdated one you just left. The chaos is temporary. The void has an exit door. The bridge leads somewhere solid, and you are currently walking across it. Now, I want to pivot to a deeply overlooked element in the conversation of spiritual evolution, the inherent intelligence of the catalyst itself. The spark zooming toward your perimeter, the unannounced trigger event, is not a random act of chaos. It isn't a cosmic accident dropped carelessly in your path. It operates with a laser precision that, once understood, instantly evaporates any lingering dread of the unknown. Let's look at the physics behind this. In the quantum realm, there is a phenomenon known as resonance. When two independent systems operate on the exact same frequency, when they vibrate in perfect unison, they interact with a startling, almost pre-programmed accuracy. They don't locate each other through complex navigation. They connect purely through energetic matching. Strike a tuning fork, and a second tuning fork of identical pitch will spontaneously begin to hum, even across a room, without a single point of physical contact. The shared vibration is the tether. The frequency is the bridge. The force racing toward your threshold is arriving for one specific reason. Your internal frequency has elevated to perfectly match the frequency of whatever awaits on the other side. This event isn't invading your life from some alien trajectory. It is being magnetically pulled into your orbit by the exact vibration you've been cultivating through every hardship and triumph you've ever faced. It is a pure resonance event. It marks the exact millisecond when two energies that have been inching toward synchronization finally collide. This is precisely why it skips the announcements. Warnings and schedules are relics of linear time clunky tools belonging to your old paradigm. A resonance event doesn't knock because it doesn't have to. It simply materializes the split second the frequencies align perfectly. And when it strikes, you won't recognize it because you marked it on a calendar. You will recognize it because a deep, ancient part of you instantly identifies the vibration. The part of you that has been starved for this exact resonance will fall dead, silent, and then erupt with absolute clarity. That is the crossing. That is the moment the portal blasts open. Understand this. That weird tension you've been feeling lately, that strange, nameless pressure boiling under your daily routine, that vague sense of impending change is not a sign of a mental breakdown. It is your internal radar picking up the incoming resonance event. Your personal energy field is already reacting to the incoming signal. On the most microscopic levels, your consciousness is already pivoting toward the new vibration waiting beyond the door. The transition has already started deep within your core. What is about to unfold is simply the physical manifestation of what your energy field has been tracking for years. You aren't sitting around waiting to be acted upon. You are finalizing a connection that has been in the works for longer than you can comprehend. The incoming catalyst is just fulfilling its half of the journey. The gateway is simply the collision point, and you are standing directly in the middle of it. Let me outline the three undeniable indicators that you have hit a quantum checkpoint. I'm detailing these three specific signatures, the hallmarks of a major state change, not because you need proof. If you've absorbed the message this far, the validation is already echoing inside you. I'm giving you these markers to serve as an anchor during the dizzying phase of decoherence. They are your lifeline, whispering, "This is an upgrade, not a disaster. This is a leap, not a collapse." The first major indicator is the sudden crumbling of once stable systems. This is the distinct sensation of logic completely evaporating from your life. The dynamics in your relationships become muddy and confusing. Your career, which once felt so purposeful, suddenly tastes like ash. The labels you used to define yourself, the roles you played, the strategies you used to survive, they all suddenly feel like a poorly written script meant for another actor. The glue holding these systems together isn't failing, it's deliberately dissolving. The energetic code that built those structures was programmed exclusively for your old reality. Your upcoming reality demands an entirely different set of gears. The unraveling of your past stability isn't a descent into chaos. It's merely clearing the construction site for a much stronger foundation, a truer stability, an architecture engineered specifically for the elevated plane you are stepping onto. The second major marker is a massive spike in sensory awareness. Paired with a complete lack of logical comprehension, you will notice mundane situations suddenly carrying an intense, unspoken weight, as if they hold profound secrets just beneath the surface. You'll catch whispers of deep meaning that your intellect simply cannot translate yet. You might experience bizarre flashes of absolute silence in a crowded room, or feel a colossal presence breathing right against an invisible glass wall. This sensory overload is completely legitimate. Your nervous system is catching signals that previously flew completely under your radar frequencies, broadcast directly from the timeline you are approaching. Your intuition is making the leap first. Your rational brain will catch up later. The final, and arguably most terrifying indicator, is the total evaporation of your old ambitions. This terrifies the ego because it automatically diagnoses this sudden apathy as depression, burnout, or a fatal flaw. However, drive is inextricably tied to vibration. You are only fueled by goals that match your current internal pitch. As your internal dial turns up, your hunger for low-frequency pursuits simply dies. You aren't broken. You haven't lost your spark. Your internal battery is just rerouting its power to support the new timeline. This sudden emptiness isn't a dead end. It's a recalibration. Once you cross over, the new desires that spark your engine won't be cheap knockoffs of your past goals. They will be vastly more authentic, striking a perfect chord with your true essence. If you are currently experiencing any of these phenomena, the crumbling of old logic, the unexplainable sensory spikes, or the sudden death of old ambitions, you aren't having a breakdown. You are standing at the threshold. The catalyst is speeding your way. Which of these three markers is screaming the loudest in your life today? The dissolving stability, the heightened senses, or the dying motivation? Drop your answer in the comments. This isn't just a journal prompt. It's a beacon to the collective network signaling exactly where you stand in this journey. Hold the line. The fog of decoherence will clear. The new paradigm is already taking shape. The door is wide open. Now, let's take action. Let's walk through it together. I am going to guide you through a specific grounding protocol. This isn't about deep relaxation or escaping into the clouds. It is a highly targeted exercise designed for crossing the boundary with your eyes wide open. It translates the quantum concepts we've discussed into a tangible, physical anchor you can use right this second, right where you stand. Get comfortable, but stay alert. Settle your physical body so it is completely still relaxed, not stiff. If you're seated, keep your spine naturally straight. If you're lying down, sink heavily into whatever is supporting you. Soften your gaze into a blur, or gently close your eyes if that feels better. Draw in a single breath that feels slightly more expansive than your normal rhythm. Don't force it. Just give the air more room to expand inside you, then let it fall away effortlessly. Now, shift your focus directly to the gateway. Don't think about it as a metaphor. Feel it as a physical reality. Somewhere inside your body, there is a specific spot holding the weight of this impending shift, that tight sensation of being trapped between two worlds. It could be a knot in your stomach, a heaviness in your chest, a tightness in your throat, or a dull ache at the base of your skull. Don't aggressively hunt for it. Let your attention drift until it naturally bumps into that tension. There it is. That is the physical manifestation of the doorway. Instead of fighting it, trying to decode it, or wishing it away, simply let your consciousness sit right there on the edge. This is the art of holding your ground, neither retreating to the past nor sprinting blindly into the future. Just remain at the threshold, observing the texture of the gap itself. Notice the reality you are currently standing in. Acknowledge the heavy familiarity of your past paradigm, the collapsing walls, the blurring maps, the vibration you are currently shedding. Resist the urge to aggressively shove it aside or desperately cling to it. Simply observe it. It exists. It has protected you, and now, its mission is accomplished. Next, while remaining anchored right at this boundary, let your senses drift gently ahead. Don't force it. Remain receptive, much like tilting your head to catch a faint, distant melody. Just past this doorway, right across the line you are towing, a new vibration pulses. You might not decipher its full tune or see its complete shape just yet, but you can perceive its trajectory. You can feel its texture. It poses no threat. It isn't alien. In fact, and your logical brain will immediately try to reject this. So let the truth sink in before logic interferes. It feels deeply familiar. It is recognizable in the same way an ancient memory is, or like a native tongue you conversed in long before you ever learned vocabulary. That specific vibration is the other side of the portal. That is the exact reality you are migrating into. Now, reel your focus back to the edge, back to that physical sensation inside your body, and realize a crucial fact. You are standing in the fire of transition, and you remain entirely unbroken. The decay surrounding you is not the decay of your soul. Grasp that this decoherence, this chaotic, floating limbo, is not your final destination. It is merely the bridge. It is the checkpoint, and you are fully present within it. You are wide awake. You are not being dragged helplessly through the void. You are stepping through with absolute vision. That defines an awakened leap. That is the essence of standing at the threshold with total lucidity. Draw in one final breath. Direct that air straight into that physical knot, the exact site of your internal gateway. As it washes through, let it push a specific energy forward. Don't make a wish or shout a mantra. Just embody a state of being, the aura of a person who fully grasps the nature of this portal, who sees both timelines, who rejects fear, and who is completely prepared to land. Exhale. The migration is officially underway. It sparked well before you hit play, and it will persist long after this ends. However, your method of travel just fundamentally upgraded. Your navigation just became intentional, anchored, and blindingly clear. This is the blueprint. This is the art of the crossing. You can deploy this exact tool anytime the limbo induces vertigo. Whenever the gray area feels too chaotic and your panicked brain scrambles for your expired maps, simply retreat to that physical anchor inside you. Park your focus there. Lean softly into the incoming vibration and remind yourself, the static is temporary. The new paradigm is rendering. The bridge has a solid exit. Let's finally discuss your destination. Most spiritual dialogues hit a brick wall right at the doorway, utterly failing to paint a picture of the arrival. I will map it out with clinical precision, because knowing the exact landmarks is how you'll recognize you've made it. I won't use fluffy cliches about magical transformations or good vibes. I will give you the undeniable, tangible symptoms of a consciousness that has successfully touched down in a higher reality. The immediate shock upon landing is the total evaporation of your internal agitation. This isn't because your life is suddenly flawless. It isn't because you've solved every riddle or eradicated all conflict. It vanishes because that agitation was a direct byproduct of superposition, the friction of trying to exist in two conflicting timelines at once. It was merely the turbulence of the approach, the moment the leap concludes, the moment those infinite possibilities slam into one concrete reality. That turbulence dies. It doesn't turn into complacency. It transforms into piercing clarity. Explaining the gap between agitation and clarity to someone still on the bridge is tough, but once you cross, the difference is night and day. Agitation is the engine of the journey. Clarity is the compass of the destination. You will definitively feel the switch. The second major realization involves everything you left behind. Those collapsed systems, shed egos, and deleted maps that broke apart during the shift. You will view them through a completely altered lens. The heavy grief and mourning that shadowed their decay will be replaced by profound gratitude. From your new vantage point, their true purpose becomes obvious. You will finally understand what they were shielding and what they were constructing. They were never meant to be your forever home. They were your launching pad, and that runway was absolutely vital. Every single brick of it. Every safety net that caught you until it snapped, and every persona you wore until its contract expired. Every map you followed until the landscape mutated. Looking back from your new vantage point, you will recognize the sheer genius of that journey. You'll see the flawless logic in how you got here. That heavy sorrow over what crumbled will soften into a vast, peaceful realization. Nothing was wasted. Every single piece of your past was utilized. The third revelation is about the catalyst itself, that silent trigger event. Looking backward, you will finally see that its form was absolutely perfect. It might not have been a cinematic explosion, nor what your ego would have explicitly requested, but it was surgically precise. It was custom-tailored to your exact energetic signature, flawlessly calibrated to shatter the specific barrier you were facing. Once you cross over, the lack of a warning bell will make total sense. If it had announced itself, your outdated mindset would have intercepted the message. You would have processed it through your old filters of fear and limitation. The catalyst had to sneak past those defenses. It had to strike your new frequency directly, communicating exclusively with the person you were becoming, rather than negotiating with the persona that was expiring. From this elevated ground, the brilliance of that trigger becomes undeniable. You'll realize it wasn't an alien invader. It was a homing signal from your own destiny. It originated from the very vibration you've spent a lifetime chasing, the ultimate state of being that was quietly assembling itself beneath every mask you ever wore. The fourth, and arguably most profound shift, is the realization that your former self is gone. This doesn't mean you've lost your core essence. On the contrary, you have landed in an iteration of yourself that is radically more authentic than anything you've ever experienced. That cobbled-together identity, the one constructed from defensive walls, societal programming, and survival tactics, isn't obliterated. It is simply digested and integrated. Those old fragments still exist, but they are no longer the scaffolding keeping you upright. They serve merely as your archives, the historical record of the trek that brought you to the precipice. The entity standing on the other side isn't a hoarder of past habits. It is manifested purely from resonance. It is born from that aligned frequency you finally synced with. You will feel an unprecedented sense of belonging in your own skin. This isn't just you, but improved. It is the true you, a sharply focused consciousness tuned to your actual vibration rather than the static you used to tolerate. That is the ultimate arrival. That is what awaits beyond the door. And it isn't light years away, nor is it dependent on some mystical future requirement. It is the inevitable byproduct of the momentum you are already riding. The new reality is rendering. The transition is locking in. You are inches away. Let me pivot and address a specific group watching this right now. Some of you are carrying a burden far denser than simple agitation. You've harbored a heavy, suffocating weight not for days, but for decades. You've been wandering toward this doorway for so incredibly long that you've grown cynical, secretly doubting if the portal even functions, or if the other side is just an illusion. Listen closely, because this is directly for you. This gateway has no expiration date. However, there is one lethal trap that can trap you in the waiting room forever, forcing you to pace the perimeter without ever stepping through. I need to expose it right now so you can drop it. It is the toxic illusion of readiness. This trap is woven so tightly into how we view personal growth that it functions like an invisible virus. It's the lie that you must attain a pristine state of preparedness before you are allowed to evolve. You convince yourself that if you just do a little more healing, grasp one more concept, or reach a specific quota of inner peace, the transition will finally be safe and guaranteed. Here is the brutal, beautiful physics of the leap. Preparedness is not the entry fee. The leap is the preparation. You don't get perfectly organized and then step through. You step through, and the act of stepping is what makes you ready. The portal doesn't unlock because you finally earned a gold star in spiritual healing. It swings open the millisecond your energetic pitches align. That alignment isn't achieved by passing a final exam of readiness. It is triggered by the sheer accumulation of your entire journey thus far. You have already walked the miles. You have already paid the toll to reach this cliff. The decades of doubt, the painful shedding, the relentless seeking that was the work. That was the fire raising the water's temperature to a boil. You do not need to hike any further. You just need to cross. You don't jump when you feel perfectly brave. You jump because the vibrations have synchronized, and they are syncing up at this exact second. That is the sole reason this message intersected with your life. That is the instinct that made your finger hit play. This exact synchronization is the reason you've listened up to this very moment. The portal is unsealed. You are towing the line. Your internal pitch is perfectly matched. The singular obstacle blocking your leap is the persistent illusion that you require further preparation. Let that fallacy go. Don't violently push it away. Simply recognize that it is an artifact of your expired identity, a persona built on the exhausting premise that peace must be earned through endless struggling. That version of you is clocking out. Once you land in the new paradigm, you won't suddenly become ready. You will realize you possess the qualifications all along. You are prepared. The door is wide open. Step through. There is zero chance of regression from this point. Let's pivot to the immediate aftermath of your leap. Arriving isn't the grand finale. It is the opening scene of a fresh chapter. The initial minutes following a monumental shift are undeniably the most critical, as they lay the foundation for your entire future trajectory. Here is the exact protocol for the other side. 1. Calibrate your senses. Your very first task upon landing is to get your bearings. You don't do this by frantically trying to intellectually dissect the new reality. That logic will develop later. Instead, you observe. You absorb the texture of this elevated environment. You allow your nervous system to download the fresh vibration without instantly trying to force it into the narrow boxes of your past experiences. This is vital. A newly arrived mind will instinctively attempt to translate the new world using an outdated dictionary. It desperately searches for old landmarks in an alien landscape, while some threads of continuity exist. If you only view your new life through the muddy lens of your history, you will completely blind yourself to its most profound upgrades, the elements that have absolutely no past equivalent. Therefore, lead with raw perception. Notice the physical sensations, the depth of the newfound silence, the sharp clarity. Let your senses digest the frequency before your brain tries to write an essay about it. 2. Active integration. Rest. The second mandate is to rest. This isn't necessarily because you are physically drained, though you likely are, but because a massive quantum shift demands integration time. The new paradigm has sparked, but the concrete is still wet. The superposition has shattered, yet the resulting reality is still finding its equilibrium. In this context, resting is far from lazy. It is a highly active phase of stabilization. It means resisting the urge to pollute your pristine new frequency with the chaotic busyness of your old life. You must grant the arrival adequate breathing room before you start giving it orders. This might manifest as deep solitude, a drop in productivity, or stretches of profound stillness that your ego will scream is wasted time. It isn't waste. It's the curing process. It is the mandatory pause required for your new foundation to solidify before you build upon it. 3. Trust the breadcrumbs. Your third step is to follow the new coordinates as they appear. They will not drop all at once. You won't receive a master blueprint. They will reveal themselves strictly on a need-to-know basis. The very first clue will be the most urgent one. A gentle nudge, a clear, immediate direction, the most obvious next action. Follow it blindly, not because you can see the summit, but because you can see the next foothold. That is simply how threshold mechanics operate. That single, immediate step is the only one that counts, and it will shine brighter than any decision you've made in years because it is perfectly tuned to your current reality, not the ghost ship you used to steer. Chase that first spark of clarity. The rest of the staircase will illuminate as you walk. This is the blueprint for thriving in your new reality. You abandon the need to have the entire plot figured out. You rely on the unfolding breadcrumbs, staying anchored in your current vibration rather than dragging out expired maps. You fully accept that landing is merely a higher-level starting line. Make no mistake, the portal is now at your back, but another one waits on the horizon. This is the endless rhythm of spiritual expansion. One leap merely sets the stage for the next. Every destination becomes the launch pad for a future threshold. The gateway you are stepping through today isn't the final boss. However, the mastery you gain here, the grounding, the awareness, the mechanics becomes your permanent armor for every leap that follows. This isn't a cause for exhaustion. It's a reason to sharpen your skills. With every boundary you shatter, your navigation becomes infinitely more precise. With every successful landing, your ability to adapt to a new paradigm strengthens exponentially. With every doorway you encounter, you spot the structural shifts faster. Your grounding techniques become sharper, and your absolute trust in the physics of the transition deepens. You aren't hiking toward an ultimate, static finish line. You are cultivating a lifestyle of intentional evolution. You are transforming into an individual who spots the portals from miles away, steps through them fully awake, and lands with razor-sharp focus, completely primed for the next ascent. That is the true journey. It's an endless sequence of deliberate breakthroughs, an entire highway of gateways, and you are currently walking it. Let's address a silent anxiety that I know is echoing in the minds of those still watching. It's an unspoken fear whispering right now. What if I miss the signal? What if the catalyst hits, and I completely overlook it? What if I'm standing right on the edge? The trigger disguises itself as a mundane conversation. I brush it off, and I end up sleepwalking through the transition. That is a highly valid concern demanding a straightforward answer. The brutal truth is, you literally cannot miss a quantum leap. The evolution triggers whether you are paying attention or not. The infinite possibilities crash into a single reality regardless of your comprehension. The leap executes, you cross the boundary, the past dies, and the new reality activates. However, there is a massive chasm between a deliberate transition and a blind stumble. It doesn't halt the physics of the leap, but it radically alters your landing condition. A blind leap dumps you on the other side, dizzy and battered. You have no clue why your world shattered. You drag the heavy luggage of pointless resistance with you, and your stabilization period drags on endlessly. A deliberate leap, on the other hand, drops you perfectly balanced. You possess total comprehension of the shift, enabling you to immediately leverage your new reality instead of wasting months mourning the collapse of the old one. Regarding the fear of missing the spark, the silent catalyst is engineered specifically to find you. It is mathematically designed to connect. As a pure resonance event, it isn't faint like a distant echo. It is subtle in the way profound truths are subtle, devoid of flashy explosions, yet entirely undeniable the millisecond they strike your core. It's that heavy hush right before the dawn of realization. It's that split second where your inner chaos freezes, sharpening to a needlepoint right before the puzzle pieces lock together. You won't identify it by aggressively hunting for it. In fact, using your logical brain to scan for the trigger is the fastest way to blind yourself to it, because logic operates on an entirely incompatible frequency. You will recognize it simply because you will feel it. Your nervous system is already locked onto the incoming broadcast. The groundwork has already been laid in your energy field, and the catalyst will touch down on a landing pad perfectly primed for its arrival. Have faith in your internal radar. Lean into that heavy silence that precedes revelation. That drop in internal noise is the portal swinging open. That is the leap. You absolutely cannot miss it. If vertigo does strike, if the static of the transition gets so thick you can't tell if you're approaching the jump, mid-air, or already landed, revert to the physical grounding protocol. Drop your focus back to that tension inside you. Anchor there. Lean your senses toward the incoming timeline. Pay attention to which vector feels vibrant and pulsing with energy. That is your compass. That is your trajectory. Always walk toward vitality, never toward comfort. Comfort is a ghost of your past. Vitality is your future. Chase the spark. Finally, let's acknowledge the collective network. I'm talking about the thousands of others absorbing this message alongside you. Individuals standing at their own personal precipices, scattered across different phases of the leap. Because ultimately, evolution is not a solo mission. It might feel incredibly isolating, and the mechanics are intimately unique to you. But an invisible web connects us. When one mind upgrades in the vicinity of other expanding minds, a chain reaction occurs. It triggers a massive resonance effect. When a cluster of human energy systems targets a similar upgrade, one person's breakthrough sends shockwaves through the rest. You can't do the physical crossing for someone else, but your successful leap serves as undeniable proof of concept. You become a living blueprint for intentional evolution. You illuminate the destination just by standing firmly in it. That is precisely why the collective energy surrounding this gateway is so vital. It isn't a social club. It is a unified resonance amplifier. By leaping intentionally navigating this boundary with absolute presence, armed with this blueprint and your physical anchor, you literally feed energy back into the collective grid. You pave the way, reducing the friction for the next traveler trying to identify their own doorway. You broadcast the new reality's vibration, making it easier to tune into for those lagging behind. I am not speaking symbolically. This is pure physics. Synchronized tuning forks multiply each other's volume. Awakened minds experiencing the same breakthrough magnify the transition for the entire network. Your intentional leap serves humanity. It acts as a lighthouse for everyone currently hovering on the brink. If these words have struck a chord, if they perfectly mirror your current precipice, bookmark this message for your quietest hours. Return here when the vertigo hits, and you need a reminder of what this portal truly is. Better yet, forward this to an ally who is currently stranded at their own checkpoint. Do not do it just to be nice. Do it to throw them a lifeline. When you deliver this blueprint to a person drowning in their own decoherence, someone whose world is unraveling without a map, you actively expand this unified field into their reality. You replicate what this video just did for your own psyche, defining the chaos, spotlighting the doorway, and proving the destination exists. Distributing this knowledge fortifies both of you. It assures them they aren't losing their minds in isolation, and it confirms to your own soul that you have mastered this concept enough to teach it. If you witness someone suffocating in that familiar agitation, watching their life dissolve and misdiagnosing it as a mental breakdown or severe exhaustion, hand them this compass. Don't lecture them. Just drop it in their lap. The vibration will handle the heavy lifting. If this frequency has firmly locked into your system, stamp your presence in the comments. This isn't a performance. It's an energetic deposit into our shared grid. Declare, I see the doorway. I claim my leap. Do this to absorb the momentum of thousands of others executing the exact same maneuver. This network of awakened travelers is a tangible force, and your voice strengthens its pulse. Drop a comment if the boundary is visible, if the 3 markers are active, if you feel the incoming spark, or if you've already touched down and want to report back from the new timeline. Every single word feeds the engine. It magnifies the collective hum and lowers the barrier for every soul in our network. The portal is wide open. Step inside. Now, let's anchor this entire broadcast into a concrete integration point. This is where the theory solidifies into a permanent upgrade you can walk away with. These aren't just neat philosophical ideas to memorize. This is an entirely new operating system. It is a radically upgraded posture for confronting your existence. A stark contrast to how you were operating when you clicked play. You arrived here stuck at a juncture you couldn't articulate. You felt the tectonic plates shifting. You sensed the pressure mounting, but you lacked the vocabulary to decode it. That blindness ends here. You now realize your world isn't collapsing. It is executing a phase transition, a literal quantum leap. The chaotic blur between your past identity and your future self is finally shattering, condensing into the sharp reality of your destiny. Your former chapter is retiring, not due to incompetence, but because it cannot survive in the high-voltage environment you are entering. Meanwhile, the new paradigm is rendering itself completely, not inch by inch, but in an instant flash at the tipping point. Just like water snapping into a solid block of ice, you understand now why your incoming catalyst won't sound an alarm. It isn't playing games. It simply bypassed the outdated communication lines of your old life. The trigger communicates strictly via your new vibration, talking directly to your upgraded self. You won't figure it out with logic. You will intercept it through a heavy, sudden silence that drops right before the blinding realization. You have memorized the 3 core symptoms of the leap: the sudden decay of your usual logic, massive sensory spikes devoid of rational explanation, and the total death of your old ambitions. And you know with absolute certainty that these aren't red flags of a mental breakdown. They are the undeniable hallmarks of an evolution. You hold the physical grounding protocol, isolating the bodily tension, parking your focus right on the edge, and tilting your senses toward the incoming timeline. You can deploy this weapon whenever the limbo phase triggers severe vertigo, when the void feels too vast and your panicked ego scrambles for expired maps. This physical anchor is your salvation. Your body holds the portal, and that access point never closes. You finally know what the destination looks like. The agonizing internal static morphs into laser focus, and the wreckage of your past is finally recognized as the necessary scaffolding it always was, completely erasing the grief of losing it. You will finally see that the catalyst was the exact missing puzzle piece. You will inhabit your own skin more authentically than in any previous chapter of your life. Your new navigational coordinates will reveal themselves precisely when required, beginning with a single, undeniable step forward. Except that this migration is actively happening. It ignited long before you discovered this video. Your deep history was simply the runway. Your internal pitch has finally synchronized, and the portal is fully unlatched. The sole barrier remaining is your own stubborn refusal to let go of the past. Drop your weapons, stop fighting a metamorphosis designed entirely for your benefit, and simply walk through. You are qualified not because you finished a spiritual checklist, but because you hit the energetic tipping point. The door is open. Take the leap. Retreating is a physical impossibility. It isn't that turning back is banned. It's that your former reality has permanently expired. That low-frequency environment simply cannot sustain the massive energy of the person you have become. This gateway operates as a one-way valve, funneling you directly toward your ultimate destiny. The most logical, vibrant, and natural action is to glide forward. The person who started watching this broadcast no longer exists. You are walking away as a profoundly altered iteration. This isn't about being better in a shallow, moral sense. It's about being flawlessly accurate to who you truly are. You have shattered the agonizing limbo of superposition, recalibrated your frequency, and officially touched down. This specific doorway is now behind you, but the journey of expansion is infinite. The next portal is already forming on the horizon. Walk bravely toward it. Now, if you want to master the exact mechanics of what happens when your expiring ego panics and tries to drag you backward into the void because it absolutely will, you need to watch the next transmission titled, Right Before Your Timeline Shift. Your old self attempts to take control again. That session picks up the exact millisecond this transition ends. That is your next frontier. And now, you possess the master blueprint to cross it completely awake.